Mommy, I'm hungry, little Julie whispered, tugging at the hem of Marina's dress as they walked along a dusty road beneath the blazing midday sun. The 3-year-old clutched a worn rag doll, the only toy left from better days. I know, sweetheart. Mommy's looking for a place where we can find some food, Marina murmured, even though she had no idea how she would keep that promise. It had been 3 days since they had eaten a proper meal, surviving on water from a public spigot and a few shriveled wild berries they had found along the way. Julie stumbled beside her mother, her tiny legs barely keeping up. Marina lifted her into her arms now and then, but she was too weak herself to carry her for long. Where are we going, Mommy? Julie asked, stopping to rest against a broken fence post. We're looking for someone who might help us, baby. It was a thin hope. Ever since Carlos, her husband, had died in a construction accident 6 months earlier, life had become a daily fight for survival. Because he had been working off the books, there was no insurance, no death benefit, no steady support. And without formal skills or education, Marina couldn't find work that paid enough to keep the two of them alive. My feet hurt, Julie whimpered, showing her dirty, blistered feet raw from walking barefoot on the rough ground. Marina looked at her daughter, thin, exhausted, hungry, thirsty. Julie was barefoot because her sandals had fallen apart the week before, and Marina hadn't had a single dollar to replace them. Let's find some shade and rest, she said, feeling her own legs trembling from weakness. They had eaten nothing solid since the day before yesterday, when a kind woman in the last town had given them stale bread and a cup of milk. Marina had given almost all of it to Julie, swallowing only a few crumbs herself. They sat beneath a scraggly roadside tree. Marina pulled out their one small water bottle, now less than a third full, and gave Julie a few careful sips. Mommy, why did Daddy go away and not come back? Julie asked, for what felt like the 100th time. Daddy didn't go away, sweetheart. Daddy died and he went to heaven to watch over us from up there, Marina answered patiently, though every explanation still sliced through her chest. But if Daddy's watching over us, why don't we have food? Marina forced a smile that felt like it might crack her face. Because sometimes things get hard, even when Daddy's in heaven. But he's going to help us. You'll see. She didn't even know if she believed herself anymore. She had tried everything looking for work as a maid, a cleaner, a babysitter, anything. But no one wanted to hire a woman with a small child. And the few jobs she did get paid so little they barely covered food, never mind rent. Look, Mommy, a house, Julie said, suddenly pointing toward something about half a mile off the road. Marina squinted and saw half hidden behind scrubby trees what looked like a small rural home. The walls looked sun-baked, and weathered the roof low and simple. Do you think anyone lives there? Julie asked. I don't know, honey. Let's go see. Marina lifted Julie onto her hip and started along the overgrown path toward the place. The trail was almost swallowed by weeds, a sign that no one had used it in a long time. As they drew closer, Marina saw it was an old adobe house, the kind built to endure heat and loneliness. Clay walls, a simple porch, a tile roof. It looked abandoned for years, but still sturdy. It doesn't seem like anyone's here, she said softly as they approached. The house was clearly empty, or at least it looked that way. The shutters were closed. No laundry hung outside. No smoke, no movement, no sign of life. Mommy, can we go inside? Julie asked. We're just going to take a look and see if it's safe to rest. Marina knocked on the front door. No answer. The door was shut, but not locked. She pushed it open slowly. Hello, is anybody here? She called, but only her own voice echoed back at her. They stepped inside. The place was spacious, with smooth concrete floors, surprisingly clean despite the abandoned appearance. There were rustic but usable furnishings, a table, a few chairs, and even pots in the kitchen. It's pretty, Julie said. Marina moved carefully through the 3 rooms, living room, bedroom, kitchen. Everything was orderly, as if someone had left not long ago but had wanted to leave the place ready. Then in the kitchen she opened a pantry cabinet and her heart almost stopped. Julie, come here, she whispered. There was food. Not a lot, but real food. A small bag of rice, a bag of beans, canned vegetables, sugar, salt, even cookies in a sealed tin. Mommy, can we eat? Julie asked, eyes huge. I don't know. This must belong to someone. Marina stood frozen between desperation and conscience, but when she opened the small refrigerator and found eggs and milk, need overruled everything else. We'll eat just a little, she decided. Only enough so we don't get sick. She made warm milk porridge with sugar for Julie and scrambled eggs for both of them. It was the first hot meal they had made in a week. It's so good, Mommy, Julie said, eating fast. Marina forced herself to eat slowly, tasting every bite while watching some life come back into her daughter's face. Whoever lives here, she whispered, looking around the kitchen, must be... Her words trailed off. In the bedroom, on top of an old dresser, she found something that answered everything. A handwritten letter lay there as if it had been left waiting for exactly this moment. To whoever finds this house, my name is Anthony Miller. I am 72 years old and very sick. I have no close family left to care for me. If someone has found this home, then I believe God meant for it to happen. I leave everything I have to whoever needs it. There are more supplies in the pantry. In the yard, there are chickens and a garden. Use whatever you need. I ask only one thing: take care of this place with kindness the way I cared for it for 40 years. God bless whoever finds this note. Anthony Miller. January 2024. Marina read it 3 times before she could believe it. Anthony had left all of this intentionally for someone like them. Julie, she said, with tears spilling down her face, we can stay here. The man who owns the house really left it for us, Mommy. He did. He really did. She searched more carefully and found that Anthony truly had planned for this. There were additional supplies in the pantry. In the yard, 3 live hens in a coop. A small vegetable patch still producing greens. This place has everything we need to live, she whispered. In the dresser, she also found a folder with documents, the deed to the property, paid tax records, and even a notarized statement for the county clerk, explaining that he intended to leave the property to the needy family who found the house. Anthony thought of everything she said, turning the pages with trembling hands. That night, Marina and Julie slept in greater comfort than they had known in months. Clean beds, full stomachs, and for the first time since Carlos died, a real sense of safety. Mommy, Julie asked before drifting to sleep, can we live here forever? I think so, sweetheart. I think Mr. Anthony prepared this house just for us, and we'll have food every day, we will. And we'll take care of the chickens in the garden, and we'll be very happy here. Julie fell asleep, peacefully clutching her doll without crying from hunger for the first time in weeks. Carlos Marina whispered to the photo of her husband she always carried, thank you for leading us here, and thank you, Mr. Anthony, for preparing this home for us. An owl called somewhere outside, and Marina smiled through her tears. The abandoned adobe house had hidden far more than food. It had hidden a whole new life carefully left behind by a generous man who somehow knew that one day a desperate family would need exactly what he had to give. Julie, she whispered, watching her daughter sleep, we're never going hungry again. For the first time since Carlos died, Marina Santos fell asleep with real hope in her heart. The old clay house found by chance had become much more than a temporary shelter. It had become home. Marina spent the first week learning the rhythms of their new life, organizing the house, getting familiar with everything Anthony had left. Julie was visibly recovering, putting on weight, laughing again, sleeping through the night. But on the 8th day, their first visitors arrived, and with them came trouble. Anybody home? A harsh male voice shouted from outside. Marina opened the door and found a thin man in his 40s with suspicious eyes. I'm Walter, he said, neighbor to old Anthony. This is my wife, Nadine. He looked her up and down. And who are you? I'm Marina. I'm taking care of the house. Taking care of it? What does that mean? Nadine shoved past her and stepped inside uninvited. Who gave you permission to be here? Actually, Mr. Anthony left a letter saying, What letter? What kind of story is that? Walter frowned. Anthony died 3 weeks ago. We're the nearest neighbors he had. Marina handed them the note. Nadine read it, and her face twisted with irritation. This doesn't mean anything. A little note isn't a will, she snapped, tossing it onto the table. We knew Anthony for 20 years. Whatever he had ought to go to people who actually knew him. He wrote that he wanted to leave it to whoever found the house and needed it, Marina said. He didn't leave anything of the kind, Nadine shot back, already rifling through the kitchen as if the place were hers. Anthony was sick. His mind wasn't right. Marina felt heat rise in her throat. He wasn't confused. The note is clear. Nadine grabbed a couple of pans as though she intended to carry them out. I'm taking a few things I know mattered to him. You can't take anything, Marina said sharply. He left everything here. Nadine laughed cruelly. And who's going to stop me? You, a woman with no husband, no family, living off someone else's property, Julie, frightened by the shouting, started to cry behind Marina's legs. Marina scooped her up, trying to shield her from the hostility. Look at that, Nadine sneered. You can't even manage your own child. How are you supposed to manage a whole property? My daughter is none of your business. Walter tried a more reasonable tone, but the greed in it was obvious. Marina, you seem like a decent woman. But this house belongs with people who knew Anthony, not some stranger who wandered in. You ought to leave before this gets ugly. The visit lasted nearly an hour, with the couple trying to bully Marina into leaving peacefully before they took legal action. After they finally left, Marina sat shaking at the kitchen table while Julie asked, Why were they yelling? Mommy, it's okay, baby, Marina said, holding her. Mommy will fix it. But how? She had no money for a lawyer, no family, no local support. The next day she walked into the nearest town to get answers. Leaving Julie in the yard to play Marina made her way to the office of Mr. Samuel, the local notary. She told him everything, finding the house, the letter, the hostile neighbors. Oh, he said, peering over thick glasses, so you're the family Anthony said would one day arrive. He said that, he did. 2 weeks before he died, he came here and filed a very specific legal document. He pulled it from a folder. Anthony Miller had indeed executed a formal notarized declaration, leaving the property to the family in need who finds this house in a time of hardship. It's legal, Marina whispered. Completely legal, Samuel said. Anthony knew exactly what he was doing, but the neighbors say he was confused. Samuel snorted. Confused, Anthony was clearer than most healthy men I've known. And he told me something else, too. He said if certain greedy people showed up after his death, that was the exact reason he was leaving the house to strangers in need, rather than to those who ignored him while he was alive. Marina walked back home calmer, but the calm didn't last. The following week, Walter and Nadine returned this time with 2 other people claiming to be longtime neighbors. Now it's 4 of us against you, Nadine said smugly. And we brought Mr. Cole. He knows the law. Mr. Cole was around 50, the type of man who used legal-sounding language to intimidate people who had never seen the inside of a courtroom. Miss Santos, your position here is highly irregular, he announced. A document giving real property to unknown parties can be challenged. On what grounds, Marina asked. On the grounds that Anthony lacked mental capacity or that he was manipulated by outsiders. The implication struck like a slap. They were accusing Marina of somehow deceiving a man she had never even met. That's a lie. That's what you say, Nadine replied. But who can prove otherwise? Maybe you met him before. Maybe you talked him into this. How? You're the ones who said he was isolated. Mr. Cole offered a so-called compromise. Either you agree to split the property, or we take you to court and drag this out for months. Split it how? The house and land go to the neighbors who knew Anthony, Walter said. You can keep the furniture. Anthony left everything to us. Because you took advantage of a sick old man, one of the others snapped. The discussion dragged on for hours until finally they left, threatening a lawsuit if she didn't come to her senses. Marina, rattled and nearly in tears, was rescued by an unexpected ally that very evening. A frail older woman with kind eyes knocked on the door. You must be Marina, she said. My name is Francis. I was Anthony's friend. Marina let her in. Francis listened, then said with immediate indignation, That lot, they never cared a thing about him. Not when he was sick, not when he was lonely. They only care now because there's property involved. Would you say that in court, Marina asked. I would. And more. Anthony talked to me about what he planned. He wanted this house to go to a family who truly needed it, not to vultures. Then Francis gave her the most important name of all. There's a lawyer in town. Young but decent. Daniel Harper. Go see him. It was the thread of hope Marina needed. Maybe she could fight back after all. Anthony, she thought that night, maybe you arranged Francis too. The house had already given them shelter, food, and life. Now it was asking her to defend not just a roof, but a man's final act of mercy. 2 months later, the official court papers arrived. Walter and the others had formally challenged Anthony's document, claiming he lacked mental capacity and that Marina had wrongfully taken control of the property. It was expected, Daniel Harper said after reading the complaint in his small office downtown. Whenever land is involved, opportunists show up. Do I have a chance more than a chance? Anthony built you a very strong case. Daniel explained that they needed to prove 3 things: that Anthony was mentally sound when he signed the papers, that Marina had never known him before, finding the house, and that the neighbors had indeed abandoned him during his illness. Can we prove all that we can? Daniel said, and I think we may prove even more. As he investigated, Daniel found that Walter and the others weren't nearly as close to Anthony as they claimed. Walter lived over a mile away. The others lived even farther. They had known Anthony mostly by sight, not through real friendship. More importantly, Daniel tracked down Dr. Raymond Ellis, the physician who had treated Anthony over his last 2 years. Anthony Miller was lucid to the very end, the doctor said. He was thoughtful, deliberate, and very clear about wanting to leave his property to a family in real need. He spoke about it several times. That testimony alone was powerful, but the real turning point came one afternoon when Marina, cleaning deeper inside the bedroom furniture, discovered a hidden compartment in the dresser. Inside was a journal. Daniel, she said over the phone, voice shaking, I found something. The journal was Anthony's. For 2 years he had recorded his thoughts, his illness, and above all, his loneliness. March 15. Sick again this week. No neighbors have checked on me. April 22. Walter drove past the house and never even waved. June 10. Needed a ride to the doctor. Had no one to call. The people nearby vanished when I got old and weak. September 15. I have decided to leave this home to a family who truly needs it. A neighbor who abandons you in sickness deserves nothing in death. There were page after page of entries documenting not confusion but deliberate planning. October 30. Went to the clerk's office to ask how to leave the house properly to a needy family. November 5. Signed the documents today. I feel peace knowing this place may save someone someday. November 12. If Walter and the others show up after I'm dead, that will prove exactly why I chose strangers over them. Daniel nearly laughed in disbelief when he read it. Anthony predicted the whole case. The journal also included notes about consultations with the notary, lists of documents and reflections on the kind of family he hoped would someday need his home. A week before trial, Walter's side tried a last-minute settlement. They offered to let Marina keep the house if she paid them $50,000 for their long-standing relationship with Anthony. It was a laughable extortion attempt. No, Marina said. Then we'll see you in court, Mr. Cole replied, and we'll prove you took advantage of a dying old man. On the eve of the hearing, Marina sat on the edge of the bed, rereading Anthony's journal. He had not only prepared for the family who would arrive hungry and desperate, he had prepared to protect them. Mr. Anthony, she whispered to the photograph of him she had found in the house, tomorrow, I'm going to defend your wishes and my daughter's future. The hearing took place on a hot Thursday morning in the county courthouse. Marina came with Julie because she had no one to leave her with. Across the aisle sat Walter Nadine, the other supposed neighbors, and Mr. Cole. Judge Fernando Costa, a severe but respected man in his 50s, presided. Walter's attorney argued first, claiming that Anthony's decision was unnatural, irrational, and likely influenced by Marina. Daniel rose for the defense and methodically dismantled every point. First came the notarized document. Then the testimony of Mr. Samuel, the notary who confirmed Anthony had been explicit and deliberate. Then Dr. Ellis, who stated flatly that Anthony was fully competent. Then Francis, who testified that the neighbors never visited, never helped, never cared. Finally, Daniel introduced the journal. As he read the most devastating excerpts aloud, the courtroom went silent. Anthony himself, through his own words, was exposing the selfishness of the people challenging his will. When Walter took the stand, he fumbled under questioning. He admitted he had not visited Anthony regularly. In fact, he had barely visited at all. Nadine did even worse, confessing in effect that they knew Anthony was alone, but had not considered it their problem until after his death. When Marina testified, Julie sat in her lap. I found the house while my daughter and I were starving, she told the judge. I never knew Anthony Miller. I only know that he saved us when we had nowhere else to go. Little Julie, too young to understand the legal significance, spoke softly into the still courtroom. Grandpa Anthony is nice. He left food for me. Even the judge's face softened. After 4 hours of testimony and argument, he recessed to decide. 2 agonizing hours later, he returned and delivered a ruling. Anthony Miller, he said, had been fully competent. His wishes had been legally documented and thoughtfully explained. His own journal showed not confusion, but clarity. Meanwhile, the challengers had provided no evidence of meaningful relationship, only evidence of opportunism after death. The action was denied in full. The property belonged entirely to Marina Santos and her daughter. Marina nearly collapsed with relief. Julie clapped, not understanding everything, but knowing something wonderful had happened. Mommy won, Mommy won. Outside the courthouse, Marina closed her eyes and whispered, Anthony, we did it. Julie gets to grow up in the home you prepared for her. Walter and the others left bitter and humiliated, and the evidence against them was so overwhelming they had no realistic path forward. From that day on, Marina was not simply living in the house. She was its rightful owner. And yet ownership brought new questions. With Francis and Daniel's support, Marina decided she wanted to honor Anthony in the most meaningful way possible by making part of the property available to other families in temporary crisis, the way Anthony had once made it available. To her. She started small. 1 spare room. Then another. A modest shared kitchen. The garden expanded. The chicken coop grew. Eventually, she used a $20,000 emergency savings Anthony had also quietly left behind to stabilize the property and help cover necessities for families passing through. Within a year, the old house had become known regionally as the Anthony House, a place where mothers with children, widows, and struggling families could find temporary shelter, dignity, and time to rebuild. Why was Grandpa Anthony so good to us? Julie once asked. Because he knew someday someone would need exactly what he had to give, Marina answered. And now we help others the way he helped us. 3 years later, a group of urban investors arrived with polished shoes and polished smiles. Their spokesman, Edward Cole, offered Marina $700,000 for the land. It was enough money to change her life permanently. With that kind of money, she could buy several properties, expand the shelter network, live comfortably forever. But the offer came with urgency and pressure. Edward claimed there were rumors of special taxes on unproductive rural land. He hinted she could lose everything if she didn't sell quickly. Something about the pitch felt wrong. Daniel investigated and discovered the truth: there was no looming tax threat. What there was, however, was a soon-to-be-announced state highway project that would run close to the area, dramatically increasing surrounding property values. Edward had insider knowledge and was trying to buy cheap before the announcement went public. In fact, the land could soon be worth over $2 million. When he returned for her answer, Marina said no. "You're making a mistake," he warned. "No," she replied. "I'm refusing to be cheated." What followed was retaliation, utility issues, supply interruptions, pressure from local contacts. But Marina held her ground. With help from the community, she installed backup power, established alternate suppliers, and built a new access lane. The resistance turned her into a symbol of integrity for small landowners in the region. When the highway announcement finally went public, Edward was investigated for fraudulent land acquisition tactics in multiple counties. Marina's land value soared, but the greatest victory she knew was not financial. It was that she had honored Anthony's vision over easy profit. Instead of selling, she used the rising value of the property to expand the shelter project the right way. 5 years after finding the house, starving and desperate, Marina stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Anthony Miller Family Welcome Center, now the largest rural family support project in the region. There were multiple small homes for temporary housing, a community kitchen, a schoolroom, vocational workshops, a larger organic garden, a small clinic, and trained staff inspired by the original spirit of the house. The model drew attention statewide, then nationally. She won awards for social innovation. The governor visited. The project became a case study in rural family care. Later, at a national ceremony in Washington, Marina received a federal award for community innovation. When I arrived at an abandoned adobe house with my daughter hungry in my arms, she told the audience, "I never imagined I was standing at the doorway, not only to our survival, but to something that could save other families too." From there, the story only grew. Her project became a blueprint for rural family-centered temporary housing. Grants followed. Training programs followed. Universities studied the model. Marina was invited to advise on similar programs across the country, then abroad. She helped create a network of centers based on Anthony's simple principle: don't just feed the desperate, restore their dignity, and give them enough safety to begin again. Julie grew up inside that mission. Once the hungry child clutching a rag doll, she became a confident girl who helped welcome new families, read to frightened children, and understand in the marrow of her life what it meant to receive grace and return it multiplied. Years later, when Marina stood on an international stage speaking about family-centered anti-poverty systems, she never forgot the real origin story. It had not begun in a boardroom, a policy office, or a university. It began on a road with a starving mother, a barefoot child, and an abandoned house prepared by a lonely old man who believed that if he could not be saved, perhaps he could still save someone else. That was the true genius of Anthony Miller. He had understood that generosity is most powerful when it is specific, practical, and ready before the need arrives. He had left rice, beans, eggs, milk, a garden, chickens, documents, legal protection, emergency money, and a path forward. He had not just left charity. He had left structure. He had left a future. 10 years after Marina first opened that pantry door with shaking hands, she stood before world leaders speaking about child poverty, family resilience, and the power of localized care networks. But the center of her message never changed. The greatest transformations in human lives, she said, do not usually begin with abundance. They begin in moments of extremity, when one act of prepared kindness meets one family desperate enough to recognize it, receive it, and honor it by helping others. The old adobe house had once hidden food and shelter. Then it had hidden purpose. Then it had hidden a movement. And the deeper truth it carried was simple. Sometimes the place where you arrive, starving, ashamed, and out of options, is the very place where your life begins to feed the world. And sometimes the greatest inheritance is not money, land, or security. It is the moral responsibility that comes with being saved. Marina never forgot that. Julie never forgot it. And because of that, Anthony Miller, who died alone in a quiet house on a rural road, never truly vanished. He lived on in every family who found safety because Marina had once found a note on a dresser and chosen not only to survive but to multiply mercy. Tell me what you thought of this story and from where you're watching today. M.